Welcome back. I hope you enjoyed the small group discussion and had a chance to meet a few new people. Be brave, look up your new friends on LinkedIn, and maybe have a virtual lunch. Build on tonight's base. Now it's time for the Leverage Award presentation, but first I'll give you a little context. The Collaborative established the Leverage Award in 2014 when it launched a Leverage event. The award is designed to honor the diverse leaders of transformative community design and development in the region. The award typically recognizes leadership external to the collaborative and can be a public, private, or nonprofit civic leader or organization. In selecting an honoree, the collaborative looks for commitment to social impact design, community engagement, and equitable development, achievement in supporting transformative community development projects, and the ability to expand visibility in corporate giving as an ambassador for the collaborative. To date, we have honored 6 impressive people and 1 highly regarded organization. This year, our 30th anniversary, we present the award to a group of people who embody all these qualities, the founders of the collaborative. This group of visionaries banded together in 1991 to resurrect the concept of a community design center for the benefit of Philadelphia. They sought to create sustainable structure and process for providing pro bono design services to organizations that could not afford them. Our founders laid the groundwork for supporting equitable community revitalization throughout the city. They devoted many years to getting the collaborative up and running and increasingly raised the level of professionalism. Among them are past project volunteers, past board chairs and co-chairs, as well as staff and leadership of the AIA Philadelphia chapter. They gave their hearts and souls and then handed the baton to new leaders to carry us forward to today. I present to you our founders. Mara Baird, Alice Berman, Patrice Carroll, Alice Domert, Linda Doder, Susan Frankel, Dan Garofalo, Sandra Gars, Stephen Gibson, Mary Ellen U.S. Hagner, Sally Harrison, David Hinson, Scott Kallner, Emmanuel Kelly, Robin Coles, Harold LeBeau, Don Matskin, Robert Shamble, Jan Strauss, and Susan Smith. Let's now raise your glasses and toast the 2021 Leverage Award honorees, the Community Design Collaborative's founders. Here's looking at all 20 of you. I now invite Don Matskin and Alice Berman to represent the group and accept the award.
Thank you very much. On behalf of the founders, I'm humbled on all of our behalf to be part of this distinguished group of prior awardees, and also to be representing the amazing group of founders that we have for the last 30 years. Not only did the group start the organization, but have been really instrumental in keeping it relevant and passing it on to the people who are ably keeping it going.
Right, and I echo all of that. And really, my participation in the startup was very brief. I'd like to think that it was instrumental, but still very brief. And the people who carried on and came forward to lead it onward have been phenomenal. The whole thing was a joy to do, a joy to set up, and a joy to be part of now.
Again, agreeing with that, and also how many people besides us, the founders, have been so important in keeping things going and making the organization evolve. So all of the executive directors we've had, Beth Miller, who was with us for so long and so well connected and thoughtful and thought-provoking, was a big part of how we got to where we are today. And a lot of others who aren't founders, like Mami Hara, who was a big picture thinker and very helpful in the infill. Lots of people have gone into making this what it is today.
for sure.
Thanks so much, Alice and Don. Congratulations to our 20 founders on the 2021 Leverage Award. This group of citizen architects have been so influential and inspiring to the Philadelphia AEC industry. I had the esteemed pleasure to sit down with a few of our founders to discuss the impact their efforts 3 decades ago have had on our field and city. Please enjoy this founders chat with Sally Harrison, David Henson, and Emmanuel Kelly. Well, thank you all for having this conversation with me today. I'm so excited to be able to sit down and have this little chat with each of you, representing our founders of the Community Design Collaborative. If we could just take a second and each one of you introduce yourselves, starting with Sally.
Hi, I'm Sally Harrison. I am a professor of architecture at Tyler School of Art and Architecture at Temple. And I am on the advisory council of the Community Design Collaborative. And it's been a joy to be part of this institution for 30 years.
Wow. Hi, I'm David Henson. I'm a professor of architecture at Auburn University down in Alabama, and was part of course, the group that got things started 30 years ago in Philadelphia. My heart's still there.
I'm Emmanuel Kelly. I taught at Temple for 25 years or more as a professor of architecture. I have a firm, Kelly Maiello, in the city, practicing for over 40 years, and I am still practicing and enjoy it.
That is absolutely amazing. You know, they say architects don't die, they don't retire, they die. They work forever. Well, I want to kind of think a little bit about our history and a little bit about where we're going. I think each of you really has committed a lot of your personal, professional life to many of the values that were embodied by the founding of the Community Design Collaborative. And so the first question I have for each of you is, after 3 decades, why are organizations like the Collaborative still necessary, or are they still necessary?
Well, I'll jump in.
Go ahead, David.
Yeah, I think they are. I mean, I think part of what was the magic of the collaborative, and still is, you know, the problems that we face as communities are so complex, and so they cross, you know, so many different boundaries of expertise that individually it's very easy to be overwhelmed and kind of paralyzed to inaction by this magnitude and complexity of the problems. And I think what makes the collaborative so essential is that it empowers individuals to work as part of teams, and therefore kind of lifts people out of the kind of sense that, you know, there's nothing I can do individually about this big kind of wicked problem. I can do that through a vehicle like the collaborative, however, and I think that's not exclusive to Philadelphia, obviously. I mean, it's the kind of approach to problem solving that I think empowered community organizations realize all across the country and around the world. So I think they're absolutely essential.
I'll add to that and say that, you know, 30 years ago, the city of Philadelphia and many cities in the US were actually feeling as though they were in a desperate post-industrial decline, with people fleeing the city, industry and so forth, disinvesting. But in the 30 years since the founding of the collaborative, there's been a return to the city of rejuvenation and so forth. And all that's wonderful, except the poverty levels are wickedly, to use David's term, still entrenched. And more than ever, we need the collaborative, we need activists. I think all of us are activists in different ways, to work on behalf of communities. Questions of gentrification are really a sticky wicket. There's good, and then there's serious problems. And if the collaborative and right-minded designers can work with communities so that communities can bring forward their assets and create an expression of who they are and what they aspire to be, that helps advocate for community first. Maybe the developer comes later, or the profit motive comes later.
Just to add to what Sally and David have said, we're reminded by current events that social equity, economic equity, and other kinds of issues of equity are at the forefront again. So it reminds me of the 60s, when that was the last time in the 70s that those things had come forth. And that the current younger generation is much more in tune with that and have those as their values. And so that's encouraging. That's very encouraging, the sense of social responsibility and helping others that may not have the resources or the skills to solve their problems, and help them develop plans and visuals to understand how things can be better and how they could go about getting financing to support those and move forward.
I think, all of you sort of reminded me about this idea of activism. And I think it's a difficult word in the design field, especially in architecture. I mean, we always have to call it out as something separate, right? People that do this work, we call them citizen architects. And I think there's been a resurgence of the idea of that social responsibility of the architects and trying to re-engage it in practice. We've seen it come out of a lot of our professional organizations. We've seen it at a lot of our school levels. But it's been inspiring. I would say the last year I've had some of the very critical conversations, and not always easy conversations, but it's been really rewarding work over the last year, working alongside other design professionals that are really, really pushing for change. I think that collective action is kind of the way forward. As David put it, there's an African proverb that says, if you want to go somewhere fast, go alone. But if you want to go somewhere far, go together. And I think, we've got a lot to go. It's a far route that we've got to take to really start seeing some systemic changes in our cities and in our neighborhoods and in our field. And it's going to really take this collective action of other individuals like you to kind of really see longitudinal change occur. But I think each of you are really monumental because you've been doing this work for so long. And so kind of as you reflect on your own careers, what has driven you the most in this kind of space?
The fact that for me, it's well, I started at the architect's workshop. Remember that? Maybe you don't, but maybe
Yes.
Kelly remembers that. Right after college, and it was the biggest eye opener for me. I felt so connected to the city that I was living in. Felt like a sense of purpose for architecture and design, and was able. I worked in a practice that wasn't all committed to that all the time, but there was a sense of social purpose in the firms that I worked for. And Kelly and I did the RUDAT. Remember that, Kelly? North Philadelphia RUDAT. That was something that really actually, bounced the collaborative into being, because they were saying, okay, so now what? What are we going to do now with all these big visions? And so it seemed to have snowballed in a way for me, and I continue to work with students in the urban workshop, which I founded at Temple. But it's more, then the longitudinal questions of bigger research projects, longer relationships that you're able to have in a institution. So I think there's so much opportunity for creative thought and creative design in where problems are really deep and really complex, as David mentioned, that that is an inspiring, continually motivating question for me.
Well, it's easy to build on what you said, Sally. 89 is when the RUDAT came to Philadelphia. And that was architects, planners, urban designers, sociologists, anthropologists for a week. And in a week, the kind of interest from communities in North Philadelphia saw that there were things that could be done, and there were people that were willing to show them the way, working with them. And after the end of that, Sally and I can't remember, continue to co-chair that effort. And I can see today many projects that came out of that to the benefit of that North Philadelphia broad neighborhood community. And one can see housing, affordable housing, good, environmentally planned well, and that the residents that are living in those places appreciate it. I can see similar things in deep South Philadelphia, beyond Center City, which is expanding its name from the developers to Washington Avenue, not South Street, but deeper in South Philadelphia. I can see planning of different neighborhoods, particularly deep in South Philadelphia, where it used to be Tasker Homes, has developed into the same kind of housing that is in Girard Estates. It's no longer, these are poor people that lived here. Same housing, same landscape, and the planning in a way that encourages neighboring and so on. Now, I drive down there maybe once every 6 months. And boy, it's wonderful to see people proud of where they live, taking care of the property. And then we're going into spring now, mowing their lawns. And half of those people are homeowners as well as renters. I mean, so it's wonderful seeing that. And I feel a lot is accomplished. And it's reminding me that change comes slowly. A lot of effort, but change comes slowly. And I think the younger generation of today are committed to that kind of social responsibility and activism. So that's very encouraging.
Yeah, that's
and others.
Building on Manny's observation there, that for me, that's what the experience of being involved in the founding of the collaborative sparked, was this curiosity about where does this ethic of service and engagement come from?
Mhm.
And I became convinced that the experience that young professionals to be have in the professional phase of their education is pretty catalytic and critical relative to the cultivation of that kind of service ethos in the profession. And it led me ultimately to come down to Alabama, where Samuel Mockbee was kind of building a reputation for Auburn around this idea of community service and engagement. And I've spent the last 24 years of my career here working to kind of help embed those kinds of experiences into the curriculum. And 30 years ago, you could count on one hand how many architecture schools had a community-based program. Today, if you don't have one, people look at you and say, what's wrong with you as a school of architecture if you don't have some kind of community-based program? So I think the spirit that Manny's referring to in the kind of young generation is a direct product of the fact that community engagement, service learning, those kinds of experiences are now embedded in American architectural education. And I think that has a lot to do with why there's such a strong sense in the younger generations of practitioners today that this kind of work is just part of what you do if you're an architect. And I think that's amazing. And for me, that sort of notion that, okay, this is an important part of the kind of work that, you know, we could be involved in was sparked by being there at the birth of the collaborative.
I think you bring up some really good points. I think back to my own architectural education, and it wasn't very community focused. And I always was. It was always something that was like intrinsic to the way I operated and I saw the world. And it made aspects of architecture school really difficult. And coming to Philly, I was really inspired. I think one of the things that latched me and kept me here in the city was how rich the community development and that kind of design activism community is here. It's around every corner. There's community organizations. People are really ready for it here in a way that I don't see in many other cities, which is really exciting. And it was one of the reasons I was so elated to kind of step into this role. But I think you guys all bring up the difference between like education and practice, like turning back to kind of our volunteers and thinking about the volunteers. What is the significance of this work on designers? Like, why should they do it? Why should they volunteer? What's important? What's the value add? And how do we as designers have real impact in communities?
Well, the impact that we have is, I mean, okay, I'm coming from as an educator largely, is the ability to sort of demystify, open up the process, to make and thereby empower members of the community that have some kind of major project that they're inspired by or that's been around for years. They haven't figured out how to go forward with it. So, we can open up the process. We can, be teachers, but also learners at the same time. If you bring that humility of like, this is your neighborhood, you are the expert in the neighborhood. We can bring our professional skills, and together we can collaborate on building a vision for you that is where you're at the helm, where the community is at the helm, and we offer the support and our own vision and imagination to the problem. So it's sort of such a synergistic kind of process that I think is pretty exciting. I've seen excitement by people in neighborhoods. I've been seeing excitement by students and by colleagues who sort of feel like, wow, I've got my hands on something here. So
to add to that, I think Sally and David said it eloquently, that 30 years ago, architecture, more than 30 years ago, was on composition and good design. And it started to emerge that there were seeds that service was important. What can you do to contribute and better the lives of people in the physical sense of their community, as well as their own sense of well-being? Now, some of that comes out of individuals that have that strength. Some of that comes out of how they were raised. But also that has been taught for 30 years. So service is something, giving back, how you can contribute to making someone's neighborhood better. As Sally said, listening to what their problems or ideas are and giving them a framework and structure to see how that can be advanced. So I think this is a good time that there's not as much having to lead students, because students are anxious or more anxious to help change and improve communities. And I'm not sure whether it was Sally or David, is that you have humility, that you're not going to tell some neighborhood what to do. You're going to understand what are their issues and how you can help bring those forward. and how you can help. And so there's also an exchange of understanding about the people in that neighborhood and for them getting to know you. And a lot of issues in communities is trust with professionals because of all kinds, and they equate them with architects as well as lawyers or people that are trying to take advantage of them. And so there's an exchange in trust. And once there's trust there, then there's listening and learning both ways, and projects can move forward. So designers can make major and are making major impact. And that begins with students, where there are programs that exist to that engage with the communities that they're in.
I would say just everybody, well, most architects I know, really want to feel like the work that they're doing is making a difference in people's lives. And there's the magic of working with community organizations and underserved populations is that you realize, compared to the typical client that pays for architectural services, where your impact might move the needle 2 or 3 degrees on the dial, your impact when you work with a community that doesn't have routine access to professionals like architects, you can move the needle massively. And I think that the reward for volunteers of the collaborative is just that. It's just seeing how impactful your talent and expertise and experience can be when it can be applied in a setting that rarely gets access to the kind of expertise that they need. And so that's the empowerment for me. That, I've had students tell me that working for community client completely changed who they thought they were working for. And because they thought they were working for themselves up to that point, and they realized, oh my gosh, no, I'm working to make this person's life better. And that could totally transform the way they thought about themselves and about architecture and about practice. And I think that's the payoff for collaborative volunteers. I think at the heart of it is a feeling that they're really making a difference.
Absolutely. I mean, that's such a great, you make me want to go volunteer right now, David.
You are.
I thank each of you for the time and the energy that you guys put in with the other founders in the founding of this organization, in your shaping of the many institutions each of you have been a part of. Many of them are in Philadelphia, but David, even as far as Alabama. I think, each of you have had an impact even on my career in ways that I've never really been able to acknowledge you for, in just shaping how I thought about things, projects that I looked at. And so I do want to take this moment to thank each of you for that. And in closing, because, we are celebrating 30 years, 3 decades is a long time, but it's not, there's more to go. So, 1 minute or less, if you had to do a stump speech for the collaborative, what are your hopes for the organization for the next decade?
My hopes are, and probably hopes of others, as I said earlier, we're reminded that current events are telling us and the total society, not just communities, that there needs to be more effort towards social and physical economic equity. And that is cross-generational. All of the younger students, whether they're in architecture or in other fields, are coming out feeling that they need to contribute to that effort. We can see it in the protests that we've seen nationally and so on. And so my hope is that the broader society contributes its resources financially to assisting the collaborative in making that happen. Giving something back if you can't do it physically yourself, at least there is a kind of service that helps the collaborative continue with the work that is so still badly needed.
Just to follow on that, in particular, I would like to see not only the collaborative become the beneficiary of outside funding, potentially government funding, now that government is allowed to act on behalf of the needs of the people. And there has been some discussion about having actually alternative service being again reinstated as a legitimate and important next step for young people before they enter for sure into their careers. And potentially more Vista or AmeriCorps engagement with the collaborative. But also what's near and dear to my heart is to see ways in which the collaborative might be able to connect strategically to universities to take advantage of not only the sort of long-term research that may be needed that a set of practitioners may not be able to afford the time to do, and to also engage the students. I know the collaborative has never wanted to have students running projects. Fine with me, that's good. But to engage students maybe as interns, as assistants, or some way, so that they can be even more engaged in this sort of training as community design activists. And then one more thing is, I don't know where I was going to put this thing, but good design. It is not either or. You're not either serving or be an artistic genius. You can do both. And who needs it more than people who have been underserved for so long, and who basically live in communities where they do not have access to escapes. So more green space. Oh, sorry, I'm on my soapbox now, but anyway, I've exceeded my 1 minute limitation, but I wanted to get a hand in the air for quality design being equitably distributed across all groups.
You can always soapbox for quality design. I always support that.
You know, it's fascinating to me. I can remember sitting around the table in that front conference room in Don's office and worrying about how long would the collaborative last. And somebody would say, well, it'll run its course, and that's just fine. Don't worry about it. And to think that the collaborative is going strong at 30 years is way, way, way beyond what any of us at that table, I think, expected to see happen. So I have a lot of confidence that the collaborative is going to thrive. I would say, this is a pretty momentous week of anniversaries of catalytic events in the life of our country. And I know last summer, we probably all took to the streets because we're just so fraught with a sense of just God had to do something. And I would say to my fellow architects and engineers and landscape architects and all of those that ultimately your greatest power is with that talent and expertise that you have. And the collaborative is a mechanism to do something in a way that makes your community better and empowers communities, particularly those that are traditionally not empowered in large communities and small. And that I would hope that the young generation of design, the design community in Philadelphia, sees the collaborative in the way that we saw it. And that was this amazing opportunity to put your time and talent to work in a way that could have a big impact.
Can I say one last thing? As we're talking, David, I'm reminded of seeing the latest housing and planning coming out of the rural workshop.
Rolls through
The
the-
housing is amazing.
Thank you.
And getting the media coverage covers that. You know that some of this is being done somewhere. And I would like to see the collaborative put on media in some way. Some of the projects are being done, so other communities know that this is being done. I would even take the rural workshop of those 6 projects, and the individuals living there, you can see their faces, are so proud of what has been done to give them a good housing and living situation. So communication.
Communication is important. Absolutely.
It is.
Mhm.
Well, thank you all. I see I have my work cut out for me in bringing these visions that you guys all have to life. But don't worry, I'm game. For everyone who's at home tonight, thank you for tuning in. We look forward to doing more of these in person. So next time, everyone, we've got to meet up in face to face. And I'm glad that we got to have this conversation together today. And again, congratulations on your 2021 Leverage Award. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
What an evening. On behalf of the board and staff of the Community Design Collaborative, I appreciate all of you for joining us tonight. Thank you to all of our founders for recording interviews, raising funds, and joining us from Seattle, Alabama, Delaware, and Greater Philadelphia. Without you, we would not all have an occasion to celebrate this milestone year. We appreciate the project representatives who reflected on our 30 for 30 projects and then joined us this evening to bring their projects and experiences to life by sharing more about them with our guests. Thank you to our Board and Resource Development Committee for working over several months to seek support for this event. You wrote, called, texted, you urged each other on. I know you are still waiting to hear which team won the Cupcake Challenge. We'll get back to you on that. Rest easy knowing your efforts were a great success and will help us continue our mission. We are forever grateful to our technical director, Joel Avery of Creativeness, our event manager, Catherine Sontag, and our filmmaker, Graham Nolte, for listening to our vision for leverage, searching for solutions, and helping us put all the pieces together. Thank you to our event committee for planning such a great event tonight. For those of you who ordered cocktails, join me in a toast to them for making this virtual event feel special and engaging. Cheers. Special shout out to our high school volunteer, Jessica, for assisting with our social media and gallery creation. And congratulations on graduation. We look forward to seeing you as a volunteer next year as a local architecture student. To my hardworking staff who led and supported our volunteers and our consultants, thank you. You deserve some time off to catch your breath and sleep. You all have been truly committed to the organization and make us greater every day. Lastly, thank you to all of our 2020 and 2021 volunteers who delivered a range of pro bono design services and those who support them with thoughtful feedback so we can continue to deliver exceptional design to our nonprofit clients. That's it and that's all, folks. Good night.